welcome. My name is Teresa Blissing, and I'm the founder of the Asia InsurTech podcast and the head of TDI Connect at the Digital Insurer. To celebrate International Women's Day this year, I am honored to host this panel in partnership with InsurTech Connect Asia and the Digital Insurer with the topic Women in InsurTech, the Hard Truth. I am super excited to be joined by three amazing female leaders. Winnie Wong, CEO and Executive Director of AWO Insurance and Asia Insurance. Regine Lai, co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at My Insurer. And Christina Kai, co-founder and CEO of Lydia AI. Welcome, ladies. So great to have you join this important panel today. If you look at the statistics, in 2012, there were 12 female leaders in the Fortune 500 companies. So that is only 2.4%. 10 years later, we are still only at about 8% with 41 female leaders in the Fortune 500. If we are looking at insurance, we have 4 women in the Fortune 500 working for insurance companies, but a total of 45 insurance firms part of the global Fortune 500. So less than 10% of female leaders in the insurance industry. And I believe there's not much difference in the InsurTech space. I have interviewed a number of leaders in the InsurTech space and really tried to have a gender balanced approach, but the reality is we have very, very few female leaders in this space. Winnie, you are not only the CEO of an insurance incumbent, but also the CEO of a new InsurTech virtual insurer in Hong Kong. In your experience, what do you think are some of the reasons we have so few women working in insurance and InsurTech?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I think the first reason is definitely stereotyping. Parents, teachers, as well as peers always think that girls should choose art or literature related subjects, and even encourage them to study arts instead of STEM. So they were not given an equal opportunity to study STEM related subjects to start with. And probably also because of the fact that girls are better at languages. So that's why the teachers ask them to study arts instead of choosing STEM and computer science related subjects. And the second reason is, I believe there is insufficient female role models in our industry. And as you have rightly pointed out, the figures only slightly improved throughout the past 10 years. Insurance has always been very much male dominated because it's a very, put it this way, an industry with very long history and a very conservative industry to start with. And there's always a glass ceiling for female to reach to the top, and not to mention InsurTech. And the third reason, I believe, is the very demanding nature in terms of time and commitment in the InsurTech industry. And many female, unfortunately, they are also the caregiver at home to take care of children as well as the elderly. And they have the huge burden and responsibility on them to look after these family members who are young or sick. And transforming a very traditional insurance industry require huge commitment in terms of energy and time. So many female were not given the opportunity to choose an InsurTech career, particularly at the top. So I think all these are key reasons why there's a very low number of female in the InsurTech industry.
Thanks, Winnie. Regine, from your point of view, what are some of the reasons you see, or are you fully agreeing with Winnie here?
I think a good part of what Winnie has mentioned, I can resonate with that for sure. So I think especially the part about, insurance being a very long-standing line of business, and the fact that, we really need to go the extra mile to achieve success in that. And to be honest, I do feel like there is I would like to say, a systematic lack of flexibility amongst, the C-suite people at a time. You need to put in a lot of effort, and like what Winnie said, a lot of us are like caregivers at home, and that lack of flexibility does not give us, the kind of does not allow the time for us to do what we are also, society wants us to do, like raising of children and a family. And so the very rigid, high amount of hours necessary to put in, so in order for us to move ahead, I think that itself could be a roadblocker, for us.
No, thanks, Lydia. Christina, I wanted to ask you, because Ludi AI is a company focused on technology, on machine learning. What is your experience? Why are there so few women in this space?
So I love what's been really said. One point you made really resonated with me, where you said it's a history of, like, insurance was a history of male dominated industry, right? And what's interesting here, and what really resonated with me, is that venture capital, so control of capital, happens to also be a male dominated industry. So when you're looking at some of the rates of venture capital for women founded startups, or startups in general, also InsurTechs, I think the statistics are actually quite similar. I think in 2020 it's like 2 to 3% or something like that. So no different from some of the other crazy statistics you hear out there. So the way that I thought through this was that, hey, when we were fundraising, what I experienced was that, women have had like less time to build up what I want to call almost like a gender legacy, where it's a bit like, they have this way, it's like almost like it's like a way that men have gotten together where they help each other make money. And it's like a bit of a boys club, right? And now this is happening for women with lots of like women focused VC funds. It's happening for us. But the way that I see it is like, they have decades on us. They have like a history of this. And right now we're playing essentially catch up, right? So I definitely think that's like one of the reasons why we're seeing less, right? Because you know what, like they already have pre-established like systems of mentorships, all of that we're just getting started to play catch up on. So I'm really happy with the progress that's happened, but it's just, we still have work to do.
Yeah, you're making actually a really interesting point, right? That times are changing, and we see more, women coming together. Like, this is a great example that we come together and address this issue, and work together with InsurTech Connect Asia, work together with the digital insurer to also normalize having female leaders in this space and giving them a voice, right? Winnie, I was wondering, you had, several steps in your career leading up to the, CEO position you are holding now. Do you think the industry has changed over the, past years since you have started in the insurance industry? And what do you think is the change that really InsurTech is bringing to the industry?
Yeah, I think it's been changing, but very slowly. We are still lagging behind, and very seriously lagging behind the banking industry, for example. In Hong Kong, there are a lot of bank CEOs who are female, but unfortunately for insurance companies, still very much male dominated. But of course, because of the reasons that I just outlined, as well as my fellow panel speakers mentioned, there are still a lot of obstacles for female to reach to the top. And I think there are a lot that we can do in terms of, like, especially at the top level, CEO as well as board levels. There are too few female at the boards right now, and board diversity is a serious issue that a lot of listing rules are trying to address. So I think if there are more specific requirements in terms of number of female on boards, on listing company boards, I think that would help to push the figure a bit better. But unfortunately, as Christina mentioned, it's still the old boys club. So when they look for female board members, they normally look for those who are in their families, so family members. So unfortunately, it's still the case. So I think there is a lot more that can be done in terms of addressing this issue. But fortunately, I think it's definitely changing. And in terms of what you asked, whether InsurTech is helping on this, unfortunately not. If we look at the virtual banks in Hong Kong, virtual insurers in Hong Kong, there are 8 virtual banks in Hong Kong. But at the beginning, all 8 of them were male. So I told some of the conference organizers and said, we have to do something about it and encourage more female CEOs to be on the virtual banks. So right now, I think we have one, especially they have a lot more choices. There are so many female banking CEOs, and they should have the opportunity to be virtual bank CEOs as well. And for virtual insurers in Hong Kong, I'm the only one. So I think there is a lot more that we can do about it.
Yeah, certainly. And Regina, I wanted to get your views on, what are some of the challenges that women in the InsurTech space are experiencing, and maybe you can share some of your personal challenges that you had to overcome working as a female leader in the InsurTech space.
All right, so I'm going to be speaking from my heart because I think this issue is really, I could resonate with it. And I think the first thing that I always tell people is that like fear of failure. So I think like running a business is risky, it entails the unforeseen. But, we all know that no one goes in a business with a guarantee of success. But I think for women in InsurTech especially, when I started the business like 7 years ago, InsurTech is virtually unheard of. Yeah, and being a woman in that sector is in Singapore context, I was probably like the only person. Yeah, so I really dread failing. I guess everyone who goes into business does, but I think especially so because a lot of people are very skeptical about what I was doing and whether I was even capable of succeeding. Not even succeeding to be able to even keep the business afloat. So I think this fear that I was operating for a good number of years is toxic, is perilous, because I'm instead of operating from a place of like confidence, I am doing it out of fear, and as a result, I think it was a roadblock for me. It was an obstacle for me to be succeeding, even if I was meant to. So it was some of the, I think this is one of the biggest challenge that I faced. And I think, secondly, I think what Christina mentioned earlier on is also very relevant about the all men's club. Yeah, because being in InsurTech, again, it was a new economy that was unheard of, up to maybe like 5-6 years ago. So like there was very limited knowledge in that space. And empowering a woman, with knowledge is a beginning of a very long journey in this line of business. Like learning is a daily process. New information comes, with the growth, but unfortunately, access to those information is hard for me because I work with a male business partner. And like I said, he has access to the all boys club where information was readily available. They hang out, in their free time, in their social time, whereby they are able to do business, conduct business in a more social manner than I was able to. And being able to learn from each other was something that I didn't have the luxury to. So if I would say like I was lucky because I had an excellent business partner that gave a lot of support and was able to transfer those information that he was able to attain from his boys club over to me. So that was something that I think I was lucky enough, but I'm not sure if the rest of the women in InsurTech, was able to do that. And I think one last thing that I would like to also mention is that some of the challenges from a personal level that I faced was also timidity. I'm not sure if I could put this out accurately, but I think women, especially in Asia and in Singapore context, when we achieve something, when we strive to succeed, we are often very, very, shy to talk about our accomplishments. Yeah, we are afraid of being labeled as proud or boastful. And but the thing is that I feel like we need to stand by what we have succeeded in and let the people around us recognize it, so that it actually motivates myself and people in my space to actually work harder and be more visible, and to actually take up the challenge of even thinking of starting a business in this arena. So I think, in InsurTech, especially in Singapore and Asia, I think there's very few of us. But if you look at, in the States and in the wider scheme of things, people like Oprah Winfrey or like, Michelle Obama, have motivated other women, other Black women to take up, roles that were previously, unheard of for a Black woman to be, to have a trajectory in. And of course, you have, the famous Sherry Sandberg, who inspired women to come out and take a place in the corporate boardroom. For our line of business in InsurTech, unfortunately, there's very few of us. I mean, I myself is guilty of it, because I still hide behind the screens, trying to make the business work, keeping the revenue sustainable and be profitable. But when you talk about being visible in the space of InsurTech itself, sometimes I do feel like I'm still behind the shadows of my male partner, whom is very vocal and very visible in the market. Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, this resonates a lot with me, and thanks for sharing, Regine. And I mentioned before with the Asia InsurTech podcast, we really try to get a gender balance and get female leaders to speak. But the reality is, one, there are not many female leaders, and second, a lot of them don't feel comfortable to speak. And I had so many situations where you approached female leaders and asked them to come onto the show, and they were, as you mentioned, shy or just not comfortable with like this self-promotion in a way, right? And I, not mentioning any names, but I had a really powerful couple that was working together on a startup, right? And he was always out, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't feel comfortable. I feel like he's much better." I think maybe women are just not feeling that confident to go out there and being heard, which is, crucial if you are trying to build a startup, if you are going out to raise money, right? That is important. And I hope that with these, talks and with, content we are putting out there, focusing on women, that we normalize that, and that other women feel confident to go out and, just what you mentioned, Regine, having a great role model, also something that Winnie touched on, right? Having a role model and say, okay, if she can do it, I can do it too, right? I wanted to ask Christina here as well, because we had an Asian focus here, and looking at the stats for female CEOs in Fortune 500 companies in the US, all of excuse me, all of them in the US, in the insurance sector. Christina, you are based in Canada, but are also operating in Asia, have projects in Taiwan. Do you see any differences between the different regions when it comes to women in tech and women in insurance?
When I think about women in tech, I think this is a like a time thing, right? Like there is, if we look at the statistics, more women-focused funds in the US. They're starting now in Asia, but it's a buildup, right? And I'm reminded actually of myself a few years ago when I first started fundraising. This is almost like 4 or 5 years ago. And back then there was a women-only fund who wanted to fund us. And I remember back then, thinking to myself, well, I don't want to get funded because I'm a girl. Like, I want to get funded because I'm good, right? And I remember sharing this thought with one of my friends, and he had like the funniest answer. And he just said, yo, money is green. It doesn't know your gender, right? And he's like, if there was a male-focused fund, I'd totally take it, right? And you know what? Like, I think this was about five years ago, right? Like these things, like these mentality shifts, these like almost self-sabotage and like self-doubt, like, oh, they're just funding me because I'm a girl, whatever it is. It takes time to actually adjust, and it takes time to course correct, and it takes time to like I think early on when you mentioned this, like stereotyping, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't do this, you should, like, these things become hidden biases that many of us still carry well into our entrepreneurship journey, and we literally have to untrain ourselves from that, right? Like, this is about 5 years ago where I was sitting there being like, okay, I don't want to take this money, but mentality has shifted, right? There's more women-focused funds. We're supporting each other. We're getting better at building our own networks, our own not just like our own networks and all of this. So I think in the same way that if you're saying like, oh, what is tech like and what is like tech like versus Asia and North America, I think we have, or probably a few years, have more time to build up that gender legacy. We're going out there supporting each other and doing all of that, and we're seeing more and more women leaders. We're having more of these things, but Asia's definitely like it's coming, right? Like it's a global, worldwide movement. Doesn't matter where you are. It just looks at, okay, so who are the like, how is it changing, and how much time, how much incremental exponential like building on top of like little wins have we had, right? I think that just takes time. It's not happening fast enough, but it's happening.
Christina, you just mentioned something really interesting, and you mentioned bias. And I think, it's now time to also talk about why it is important that we have gender diversity, or in general diversity in the insurance and InsurTech industry. And maybe you want to start on that, as you are working with machine learning and analyzing data. How important is it that we have diversity in the business in the world?
Yeah, I think it's like mission critical to have diversity in insurance. It's like, why? Was it because 50% of the world population is women, and you're trying to create products that work for people, right? And so it's like, why is it important? Because it's perspective, right? Like 50% of the population is women. You're trying to insure women. You need women on the board to actually figure out what it is that we need, right? And for our field specifically, when we're talking about machine learning, there's a ton of really interesting things about why diversity is actually really important in models, just from a purely model perspective. Like machine learning models are blind, right? It will spit out whatever you tell it, right? And many of the times machine learning models are not that smart in the way that humans are intuitive. Like I'm going to give you an example. Like for us, like some of the data we ingest is like medical record data in order to ingest out a health score, right? All of a sudden they started showing this like, all women in their like mid 30s was unhealthy because, and you're like, okay, why is that? Why is the health score increasing for women in their 30s, right? And you know what? The crazy thing is, it's because women usually have babies around that time. So they go see the doctor more. So the machine learning models are registering this, and they're seeing doctors more. Seeing more frequency in doctors usually correlates with higher disease and whatnot, right? And you actually needed women on board to sit there and be like, okay, guys, this is just dumb. This is a machine learning model being dumb, and we're going to fix it, right? But there's no way you could, like, if you ask a dude, they'd be like, oh, I guess women are just not healthy. They wouldn't know that, 30 is kind of your prime to have a baby. So you're probably seeing the doctor more than, a woman in their, late teens or early 20s, or even like 40s and 50s, right? So that's one example where, like bias in data is a huge issue, but also when you're looking at just training the models, looking at the actually result and almost like stress testing, like gut checking and being like, okay, does this make any sense? Right? It does this like actually comply with experience, right? That's when you literally have women data scientists in our team be like, guys, this makes no sense. Like this is why it happens. We actually need to tune the models and actually fix it in a way that reflects reality, right? So that's been our experience.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. That was really insightful. Winnie, running a insurance incumbent and an InsurTech startup, how important is diversity in your workforce for you?
Yeah, I think there's numerous statistics telling us gender diversity can help company performance. And I firmly believe that, given my experience in running both InsurTech as well as an incumbent insurance company, we've been doing really well. I think that has to be done top down with top level, board level commitment in terms of gender diversity. And I think there's a big wastage of talent if we lose female talent in the middle of their career when they start to have family commitments. We should do something about it to help them. And there is a serious shortage and insufficient supply of talent in InsurTech in particular. I think if we can groom more female talent in the InsurTech field, can help improve our talent pipeline. So I think it's super important.
So my question now really is, how can we attract more female leaders to start a career in InsurTech? Christina, maybe you want to start.
I want to share the advice that I was given a while ago. It was from another female COO at a fintech company, actually, and she said, "Hey, review your job postings. Do you review your job postings?" And at that point, at that moment when she asked me, I remember I was like, I don't know, no, right? And she was like, "You have to review it and ask whoever is their hiring manager, is this absolutely mandatory? Like, do you absolutely need these skill sets? Because many of the times." Men are more likely to apply for jobs that are underqualified for, but women were not, right? So if you end up having a really extensive job posting, you're just gonna get less applicants, right? So I think that was like a really small piece of advice from her that I really took to heart. So now I review all my job posts. So you know what, review your job posts and only make sure you have the absolute mandatory stuff. So I'm very grateful for that advice.
I think that was extremely good advice, because you're right. Women, if they go for something, they have to be 100% sure that they qualify. And, while most men, they just go for it. They are more of a risk taker, if that makes sense. So they just give it a shot. Winnie, what are some of the suggestions you have, and that you also live within Asia Insurance and Avo, to attract more females to join the insurance industry?
Yeah, I think we need to start as early as possible so that girls are given the equal opportunities and encouragement from their teachers as well as parents to study STEM or science, computer-related subjects. My experience was, my teachers highly encouraged me to study literature. So exactly the stereotyping issue that we're talking about. So I hope nowadays girls will be given equal opportunities and we break the stereotype on this. And we should also allow more female role models like Christina and Regine to talk and promote at visible conferences and social media for girls and females to better understand our InsurTech industry so that they can have role models to look upon to. And then the final suggestion that I have is to address a bigger societal issue. I think males should be given equal opportunities, training, and recognition to take care of children, as well as the elderly in families. So I think they always have the excuse of not being able to do the job properly, and that's why they're not doing it. So hopefully with this, female can consider the very demanding InsurTech career.
I really love this answer. And I also love this, that it's not only what women can do, but also what men can do. And if we are looking at countries like Sweden, which is much more gender balanced, we will find that, the mom and the father both have equal parental leave rights to, stay at home and take care of the kids. Regine, what are some of your suggestions when it comes to attracting women to InsurTech?
I think I'd like to point out what Christina mentioned was really interesting, because it was something that we make a mandate out to do here at our business. Because when I was hiring a few years ago, I realized that whenever we put out a CV, all I'm getting are male applicants. So you remember earlier on in the question that you asked me, I did mention, like, in terms of gender diversity, is that we have to strive towards equal opportunities and try to avoid gaining that equal outcome. And since then, like what Christina mentioned, in terms of our job, job posting, we really try to streamline it to what is really necessary, and I try to put a whole list of qualities that we feel might be stemming out the rest of the women who might feel not confident or insecure from applying. So I think that is something very interesting that Christina has pointed out, and I think it really makes a difference, because now that I've done that for a few years, we actually managed to get a lot more applicants from the female workforce. And we actually do get, like, people, we were thinking that, oh, probably before, like we thought like a guy could be good for the job, but we realized that, you know, if you screen everything out, a woman could be even better. Yeah, so I think that is something that moving forward, that probably everyone, you know, in any industry should be looking to do. And of course, you know, I mentioned earlier on as well that being more visible in the space starts from myself, because I was a culprit. I was, you know, also culpable of being hiding behind the screen because I wasn't comfortable to coming forward to even have a conversation like that, to be on a panel. And I think, you know, starting from myself is the first step to encouraging other women to kickstart the process of thinking of having a career in InsurTech, and to motivate other people to come forward as well. Because I think if we do that, you know, probably we realize there are more of us than we thought there were. So that would be a good starting point.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's a great way to end this. I would like to thank all of you, Winnie Wong, Christina Kai, and Regine Lai, for doing this today. This was awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
You.